A copy of the proposed revenue estimates were forwarded to the council members and are on file in the city auditor's office for public inspection during regular business hours. Does anybody wish to address council on this matter? For? None? Against? Hearing none? I will take a motion to adjourn the public hearing.
So moved.
Mr. Slough first, second Mr. Hawes. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Thank you. Okay. So we did it at, I'm going to put 6:56, you said? Nine. It's 7 o'clock. Okay, according to Mr. Verizon, it's 7 o'clock. So I would like to call the July 7, 2020 regular session of Findlay City Council to order. We'll start with the roll call.
Mr. Greeno.
Here.
Mr. Haas.
Here.
Mr. Hellman. Mr. Niemeyer.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Russell.
Here.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Here.
Mr. Slough.
Here.
Ms. Warnicki. Here. And Mr. Wobser.
Present.
Okay, just FYI, Mr. Hellman had knee surgery today. Mr. Russell.
Move that Mr. Hellman be excused from the meeting.
Second, Mr. Wobser. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of excusing Mr. Hellman from tonight's meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay. Mr. Hellman is excused. Please stand for a pledge of allegiance, followed by a moment of silence in memory of Toledo police officer Anthony Diaz, who was killed on duty on July 4th. He is survived by his wife, 2 sons, and his parents. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll take a motion to accept or change the previous city council meeting minutes. Mr. Slapp.
I would move the minutes be approved as circulated.
Second, Mr. Greeno. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye. If your name is called, those opposed, nay. Or anybody, everybody say aye.
Aye.
Anybody want to say nay? Thank you. Mr. Russell, do we have any add-on replacements or removals from tonight's agenda?
Yes, we do. We have a letter from City Auditor Stasiak concerning House Bill 481, the CARES Act funding. We have Ordinance 2020-080 concerning House Bill 481, the CARES Act funding, and that is, both of those will, I'm moving that they be added to the agenda, and also moving that we remove ordinance 2020-075, which is the ODOT lease of some space at the airport. ODOT no longer wishes to lease the space. Therefore, we don't need an ordinance about it, and all that is a motion.
Second, Mr. Slough. Discussion? All those in favor of accepting the changes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The changes are accepted. We have no proclamations. We do have a recognition and retirement resolution.
First reading for Resolution 2020-2020, a resolution commending Police Chief John Dunbar for the excellence of his services to the City of Findlay, Ohio. Whereas John Dunbar, who served the City of Findlay, Ohio for 27 years as a dedicated, loyal employee, retired effective July 3rd, 2020. John began his career with the Findlay Police Department as a full-time police officer on July 26, 1992. He was promoted to sergeant on March 26, 2006, then to lieutenant on May 28, 2010, and finally to chief on June 28, 2017, a position he held until his retirement. And whereas John, who served as a field training officer, as a detective for almost 5 years, and was an operator on the emergency response team for 15 years, where he was a team leader and a team commander. As lieutenant, he supervised all 3 divisions of the police department. And whereas John was recognized as Officer of the Month in November of 1994 and also in November of 1995. He received the Officer of the Year award for 1995. And whereas during his 27 years of service to the City of Findlay, Ohio, John has performed as an outstanding public servant in a loyal and dedicated manner to the citizens of the City of Findlay, Ohio, through his responsibilities within the City of Findlay Police Department. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Findlay, State of Ohio, that the said John Dunbar be and he is hereby commended for his long and loyal services to his city, and that this council extends its best wishes to him upon his retirement from the City of Findlay, Ohio. This resolution shall take effect and be enforced from and after the earliest period provided by law.
Mr. Slough.
I would move for adoption of Resolution 20-2020.
Second, Mr. Schindeldecker. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the resolution say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Haas?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker?
Aye.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
And Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
It's official. Chief Dunbar, you are now officially retired. So, the resolution is adopted.
If I may, Mr. President, make a couple of quick remarks, and then I'd also like to allow Safety Director Schmelzer to comment before we have now retired Chief Dunbar to make some remarks. But I just wanted to extend the city's thanks to Chief Dunbar. Certainly he has positioned us well and has prepared us for this transition, and though it will be a great loss to our community, we're certainly excited for him to be able to go into this new chapter. I think it speaks volumes of our community and of the caliber of our officers, the respects that I have seen, not only from citizens, but also from our officers as they make this transition. And I think it's worth noting that earlier today, myself and newly established Chief Ring attended the funeral for Officer Dia. And as we look at the brotherhood and sisterhood that exists among our law enforcement officers, they are willing to pay the ultimate sacrifice on a daily basis to protect our communities. And that is something that is certainly a calling that many of us will not understand. But I think it's something that we constantly have to remember, not just in times of tragic events or on special occasions, but every day, because that's what they do every day. So I appreciate you guys all recognizing him with this resolution, but would also like to allow Safety Director Schmelzer to make some remarks if that's all right.
So noted. Mr. Schmelzer.
Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure to work with you. Appreciate your level of professionalism that you have helped propagate through the department. And I'm sure that Chief Ring will continue in that same vein. Our community is lucky to have you both and lucky to have all the officers on our team. So enjoy your retirement.
If you wouldn't mind coming forward, we'll present. He purposely stood behind so I couldn't look at him in the eyes as I said all that. I know you would have cried. So here is the resolution number 2020 in recognition of your years of service to our community, as well as a watch with the City of Findlay logo on there, crest. And we certainly appreciate you for your service. Thank you.
Mr. Dunbar, do you have any comment?
Well, I think my days of giving speeches are over. That's now Bob's job. I appreciate it. It does go fast, that's for sure. Back in May of '87, I started in public service down in Kenton, Ohio, and came up here in July of '92, and I have no regrets. As I'm sure Bud can testify, the time really does go fast. You hear the old timers tell you that when you get on the department, and you think they're crazy when you're working midnights on a holiday or a weekend, but you look back and it does go fast. So I do think the citizens of Findlay are in good hands. I've known Bob since he started on the department back in '96, I think, and he's an upstanding fellow. He's very approachable, he's very level-headed, he's an honest, probably one of the most honest people I've ever met. And I think you have an excellent chief of police, as well as the men and women that make up the Findlay Police Department. Not only the officers, but the civilians, the support staff, the dispatchers, they all do an excellent job. And I appreciate this recognition, but I couldn't have done it without them. There's definitely, when you're at some level of the top, whatever it is, the people underneath you make you look good or bad. And fortunately, I had excellent people underneath me. I had excellent command staff, and they made me look very good. So for that, I appreciate it, and I appreciate the citizens of Findlay. And like I say, you do have an excellent police department, one that you can approach and talk to, and if there's a problem, see Chief Ring. He will do his best to work it out. I do extend my appreciation to Paul. I've known him for a number of years, and he helped me a lot when I became acting chief and then became chief. And I think we worked well together, as well as Christina, the mayor. I enjoyed my time working with her, as well as former Mayor Mahalik. So again, appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, congratulations. So, oral communications. We have 4 this evening. The first is Nina Parker. She would like to address council.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Dunbar and Mr. Ring. I wish you the best, and my prayers for both of you.
Appreciate that.
Giving glory and honor to God, I thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I am not here to take from the Findlay community. I am here to continue to give. I have given to this community nearly all of my life, and that is 64 years. 6 months of my life, I was born in Mississippi. My father was invited to come to Findlay by Cooper Tire Rubber Company by the great name of Wayne Brewer. So that's how we ended north. I am here to continue to make this community better. Started working with children at the age of 13, and I continued with the pursuit of founding the Black Heritage Library and Multicultural Center, and by the grace of God grew it to what it is today by the generosity of this community, tenacity, hard work, and blood, sweat, and tears. For any of you who have businesses, for any of you here on council, for the mayor, you know, it's not tea and cookies. This is tough work. It's good work. The first thing I would like to suggest for consideration is diversity training for the police department. I'm talking about getting to know one another. I think that whites in general, generally speaking, need to get past the guilt. I'm so sorry for what happened. And black people have to get past the anger. I think we need to get to know each other. I think we need to have a down-to-earth diversity training like we did many years ago, in which Darnell and myself did training for the entire police department. It was 6 to 8 hours a day for the entire week. And when I say the entire police department, I mean from lieutenant, I'm not sure which is higher, but lieutenant chief on down. I think that's very, very important for all the leaders of our community, is to go through diversity training. We need to know about others. I'm sure Findlay is still about 97% Caucasian, maybe, I don't know, 1% Asian, 1% Hispanic, Latino X, and it's still about 0.5% African American. So we really don't know each other. So the diversity training is very important. I think we also have to consider if we are a little bit have an objection to a potential officer, maybe that might include a psychiatric review, because I'm telling you, we got to weed the hate out. I don't know any other way to weed out hate except to have a professional interview you about certain things in your life. So I think that's important. I know it may be costly, but I know a lot of you know people that you can get people to do that for gratis. So I think that's important. I'd also like to suggest in the future, and we can't read the future, only God knows what's going to happen an hour from now or a minute from now. But Black Brown Lives Matter 2, double BML, number 2. We would like to have a public forum hopefully in September. I'm working with a young lady who works at Marathon, and we would like to have that at a large venue, maybe Findlay High School auditorium, maybe the Cube, maybe Marathon Performing Arts. So.
Just a second, Dean.
Oh, I'm so close.
Yeah, you're at your 4 minutes.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, wait a minute. Council can give you Mr.
I'm so
Russell.
sorry.
Move that we extend this partner's time.
Okay.
Second, Mr. Slough. Please continue.
Thank you. Buddy, I told you, my friend, to give me something, blow a kiss, something. Okay, I'm going on. I worked hard by the grace of God. Let me not just say myself alone. I prayed about it, and it was a long fight under the mayorship of Tony Iridy to get the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. way. Thank you, Lord. If we're going to say we're progressive, then we got to be progressive. I would like for you all to consider a double arch with lights around the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. way. I think it would be fabulous. I think it would show that Findlay is welcoming, and I think it would also reflect our progressiveness. Yes, it costs a lot of money, but I can do some fundraising. I know a few folks, and God can touch the hearts. There's also grants out there for something like this. So, okay, 3, affordable living. Findlay's cost of living is sky high. It really is. Maybe all of us in here can afford an apartment or a home, but a lot of people can't. And if we are going to be the shining star and beacon and welcoming community, we have got to somehow get the housing cost down. I know there are complexes for low income, but what about people that are a little bit above low income, but not yet middle income? I'm sure you have always asked, why can't I get something for my kid to go to college? So I think we really have to consider this a priority for our community. The taxes, the real estate taxes, good gosh almighty. I mean, just for mine, we're sitting on $3,000 a year. And we're not over in Fox Run plus. We're not in those areas. So I think we have to work on that, because if not, people are going to vote everything down. They're going to vote it down. Drug rehab. Please. Feasible. It's feasible. It's right. It's critical for Findlay. We have had a serious drug problem ever since I've been in high school, and that's way back in, graduated in 1974. We've had rose-colored glasses on for way too long. We have got to, not in and out, I'm talking about you can live there for a period of time. You can be housed, you can be fed, you can be helped by professional. It's a lot less expensive than putting them in jail. That's my thought. And it's a lasting, invaluable thing to do, is to help those. I know rich kids and poor kids and in between kids that have died from drug overdoses. People fought against it to be in the country club area. I go, I'm not signing that. Why not have it in a decent area? Why not? Why do you want it in a poor area? So more drug dealers can come and sell to them. And don't give me that, all that baloney is coming from Detroit. Because we didn't know nothing about Detroit back in high school. And one other thing about it, if there is no demand, there will not be a sale. So we need to work on that. We need to care for people who are in need. We need to be considered a friendly community. I know many of you think we are ultra friendly. But growing up here was hard. It was ultra hard. Where you think it's ultra friendly, it was ultra hard. It wasn't easy for me to start the Black Heritage Library and Multicultural Center. I got hate mail from the KKK. I got it from the black side and the white side. But I know I had to do it to help children, both black, white, Asian, Mexican, and Russian, and all in between that's here, to have a better understanding of people that may have a different color of skin than themselves. Or you think that they may be just Caucasian until they open their mouth and speak. Like the one young man, Miss Margaret, everything was fine until I opened my mouth. And then they knew I wasn't from here. No, everything's not hunky-dory at the high school. I am working with them right now, as I will continue to work with them. Because I am not here to take, I am here to continue to give. I'm not asking for any money. I told them at the high school, I'm retired. I told you this 30 years ago. I talked with you about this 30 years ago, but new blood, new flow, and let's see what happens. I'm going to tell you, the Zoom with the police department was kind of same old, same old. I'm just being real with you. People want different ideas. They want the body cams. The money's there. The governor, I think the governor, if you go there, he just give it to Lydia. Lydia will send it back here. I'm serious. They like Findlay. They really respect this community. We won the governor's award. In front of 4,000 people accepted that award. We are special. But we cannot be a gem. We cannot be a shining star if we are not welcoming, if we don't hear the voices from everyone. And I thank you all so much for being so kind to let me go over my time. And I give God the glory, honor, and praise, because I'll never leave him out. Ever.
Nina.
Yes.
God bless you first.
God bless you too.
There are questions from council.
Yes.
Mr. Schindelbecker.
Yes.
Ron, I want to thank you for not only what you said tonight, but what you've said over the years. Now, I have said publicly, and I'll say it again, people like you and Emory Adams and others that I don't mention have done more for race relations in this community than all of the demonstrations and all of the other things, and I appreciate it and thank you.
Thank you so much for your kind words and the peaceful protest.
They
are important too.
Any other questions or comments from council? Hearing none, thank you, Nina, and you're welcome anytime.
Thank you. My mother actually named me Nina, but in Mississippi, that's a no-no.
Well,
What is that? I don't understand that name.
She was right. Okay, thank you. The second was Anita Kine, and I don't think she's still here. I think she must have left.
Yeah, we found.
Okay, so we're going to eliminate that. Our next speaker is Scott Lammers, and he'd like to speak about house and foundation laws.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the council, for letting me speak today. We live back in Hunter's Ridge, and we have 3 homes back there that are under 15 years old. My wife and I bought July 3rd of '07, and we've lived there for 13 years now. And our foundation has already went to garbage. We, have to spend almost $30,000 to get this fixed. And when these guys come in and fix our stuff, they pull out bricks and tires and wood and trash and about everything else that can be buried around this town. And I know in the past they've had people bring up that builders need to be held accountable, but apparently we do not get the assistance or the people to be on board to do this. I'm not going to pretend that I understand or that I know everything there is to know about this, but I'm representing my neighbor here, Mary Lou. She's one of my neighbors on the other side of me. Rodney Bly over here is another neighbor beside me. And I just don't know how builders can get away with this. I mean, anyone here is more than welcome to come to my house. I just had it fixed yesterday to see everything that's buried in my yard. So, whether it's fill dirt, like we are told, that are 3 lots that they just brought in dirt to raise it up. But, when it's junk like that, no wonder your foundations are failing. And then you ask the builder about it, he cries that it's Mother Nature. So I'm just asking for everybody here to please give us some thought and let's get some building rules. I'm not saying, die hard, but these guys got to be held accountable. Not every builder out there is a reputable builder. And, my father, he lives in Forest Lake subdivision. He pays big money for a house. 10 years later, he has an issue. Those builders right out there fixing it for nothing for him. But you got all these other builders that just don't care. They slap them up in 3 or 4 months. They don't place the time to tamp everything down, to do it the right way, to cut corners. You pay big money for these houses, and then, like I said, here we're going to be out $30,000 we're never going to see again. I'm not rich. I don't have money to throw away to do this kind of stuff. But I'm going to do it. I'm going to pay for it. Thank you for hearing me, everybody.
Hang on, Scott. Any questions or comments from council? Hearing none. Thank you, Scott. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Russell.
So, Mr. Lammers, just out of curiosity, how many of your neighbors would you say have encountered similar problems?
Right now, there are the 3 of us. But I can walk around my subdivision and go to house and just simply walk around, and you can see bricks falling apart in other people's homes. You try to let them know, like mine is a crawl space, that's where mine won't get. Mr. Bly's crawl space won't get. Mrs. Smith has a 4 space and hers won't get. And, we just keep being told, oh, that whole area at one time, they had to fill it in, or they put the trash on the other people's homes there, that when they were building the other homes, that's where they would stick all the trash. Well, it looks like instead of taking it away, they just leave it there. So I walk around these other neighbors' homes, ask if I can go on their property, and I probably saw 4 or 5 more that are potentially going to have some more issues. I didn't give this part out, but our whole floor started sinking because of the posts that are in there, the barriers, the 4 barriers that are in there to hold up the posts to keep your floor level. Had so much garbage, and I have pictures of all this too, that we had to have 9 jacks put in, plus an extra steel beam put in, just to keep our floor up. And that's even with the foundation breaking. But I can walk around my neighborhood and probably show you 5 other houses that the bricks are starting to pull apart on the home. Whether they're going to have issues, that remains to be seen. That may settle and that may be done. But, how can anyone think that a house is going to be okay when they pull enough bricks and wood and glass bottles and rubber tires and, anything else that you can find in the ground? No foundation is going to hold that.
Mr. Slott.
Did you speak with the builder about this?
anytime I've ever, so we had problems with Roger Best when we first moved in. We bought in '07, and he's not an easy man to talk to. We had to threaten to sue him because Findlay flood hits, found out that our sump pump was not installed right. We have a dry pit. It says all over the box that if you have a dry pit, you have to have this quarter of a weep hole between your check valve and your sump pit. And we went round and round and round on that. He didn't want to hear it. You know, everyone's flooding. You didn't have any grass at the time. I'd get every excuse there is. Finally, I called the city, and Dave Jordan came in. He started pumping dye in for me. We have the main tile right between my home and Mr. Blythe's home. Couldn't find any dye anywhere. So he made Roger Best come back up, dig up our tile. We didn't see any disconnection. Well, finally, the plumber and the city guy, I had to work that day, apparently found a rock behind my check valve in the sump pump, in the sump pit, which means my check valve was stuck open going like this. So I let that one go. 2 months later, we had the exact same thing happen, but I was home. My pump feels like it's running, but it's not running. I'm starting to get water in my basement. I took apart the pump, took away everything, plugged it in, water shot out of the pump. I put it back together, never had a problem since. Called Zoller, the maker of the pump. I showed that to Roger Best that, you know, hey, this got to have this little hole in it. They told me it's going to deadhead the pump. You're going to get an air pocket in there. He said, ain't my problem. I wasn't the person who put the plumbing in. So then he'll dish you off to one of his subcontractors. Same thing with this. Hey, you know, we got an issue with our foundation. Oh, you better talk to Gibson's. I called Gibson's. Oh, we didn't put the block in. That doesn't cover our 10-year warranty.
So there's a number of other.
Oh yeah. That's all he does is hire,
Homeowners
you know,
that-
this guy, this guy, this guy, and this
issue
guy.
in that particular area.
Yes. And he's mainly the builder back there. There have been a few other builders, but for him, it's mainly him.
Mr. Wilson.
Scott, what's the neighborhood again? I missed that.
I live on 1809 Lippincott Avenue. You go in on, you say you're going parallel with the fairgrounds on Fishlock Avenue. You're going to take a left on First Street, and then you're going to take a right on Williams, and that'll dead end into my street, which is Lippincott. We're behind the subdivision, behind Hunter's Ridge, or Hunter's Creek.
So you're not actually in Hunter's Ridge?
No, we're in Hunter's Ridge, but we're behind Hunter's Creek.
I got you.
They're not connected.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, next was Mary Lou, but I think Scott spoke for
You
her.
did a wonderful job.
Okay, thank you, Mary Lou. Okay, let's move on to petitions.
A zoning amendment request from Douglas and Carla Yoder for 1028 and 1030 Hurd Avenue to change the zoning to R2 single family medium density. It's currently zoned as R1 single family low density.
This will be referred to City Planning Commission and the Planning and Zoning Committee. There's no written communications, reports of municipal officers and municipal departments.
Board of Zoning Appeals minutes for March 12, 2020.
Minutes to be filed.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding Hancock Wood Electric Street Lighting Services contract renewal.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
A letter from City Auditor Jim Stashak regarding revenue estimates for fiscal year 2021. He asked that this letter be read.
I need a motion. Mr. Wilson.
Move that the letter be read into the record.
Second, Mr. Slough. All those in favor of having the letter read into the record, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The letter will be read.
Ohio clearly defines a budgetary process which includes the requirement that municipalities prepare an annual tax budget by July 20th. The County Budget Commission has not required the filing of a complete tax budget for many years and requires the City of Findlay only to provide the attached estimated revenues for submission to the Budget Commission for the next fiscal year. In order to meet statutory requirements for the distribution of the local government money, this document should now be formally accepted by Council so it can then be filed with the County Auditor by no later than July 20. A motion for acceptance of the revenue estimates will be needed. As required by statute, the Council Clerk has scheduled a public hearing before the meeting, notice of which must have been published 10 days before the hearing. The document has been available for public inspection in my office since June 26, 2020.
Mr. Wilson.
Jim, is there anything you want to add to this before we get into the?
No.
All right, thank you.
So it's my understanding, Auditor Stashak, that a motion to accept the revenue estimates needs to be made by council. Mr. Wilson.
So moved.
Second, Mr. Slough. Discussion. Hearing none. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Russell.
Isn't that resolution 18/2020? Oh, no, that's 5A capital, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's, I thought the same until I reviewed that. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of the acceptance of the revenue estimates, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Haas,
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer,
Aye.
Mr. Palmer,
Aye.
Mr. Russell,
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker,
Aye.
Mr. Slough,
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki,
Aye.
Mr. Wokser,
Aye.
Mr. Greeno,
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
I'm not positive if you had to vote individually, but I'd rather be safe than sorry. Okay, next. I'm sorry.
City Planning Commission agenda for July 9th, 2020, as well as the minutes of June 11th, 2020.
Questions or comments, Mr. Russell?
Yeah, just back to this last one, I'm reading the thing, and our minutes, and at the end of it, it says Resolution 18/2020 received its first reading during the June 16th council meeting. Public hearing is scheduled for today.
Yeah, I think
Is the agenda in error?
I,
The agenda's in error? Okay, great, thank you, appreciate it.
yep, thank you. All right, I'm sorry, back to the agenda and minutes for the City Planning Commission. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, both will be filed.
Letter from Service Director, Acting City Engineer Brian Thomas regarding 2020 Annual Sewer and Manhole Lining Program, project number 356-00600.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Service Director, Acting City Engineer Brian Thomas regarding 2020 Street Preventive Maintenance, project number 328-00200, and 2020 Sidewalk Accessible Ramps, project number 328-01700.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from Service Director, Acting City Engineer Brian Thomas regarding annual street resurfacing curb repairs 2020, project number 328-94500.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Did I skip one?
I'm sorry.
I don't know if I skipped one.
No, I think you're.
I haven't seen any yet.
City Income Tax Monthly Collections Report for June 2020.
Questions or comments? Report to be filed.
A letter from Mayor Mern regarding city's property and liability insurance policies.
Questions or comments? Letter to be filed.
Letter from City Auditor Jim Stashak regarding House Bill 481 CARES Act funding. He requests that this letter be read.
Mr. Wilson.
Make a motion the letter be read in the minutes.
Second, Mr. Greeno. All those in favor of having the letter read into the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The letter will be read.
The Ohio General Assembly passed House Bill 481 that provides for the distribution of $350 million of federal CARES Act funding to the counties, townships, villages, and municipalities that have a population of fewer than 500,000 residents. This funding is referred to as the Coronavirus Relief Fund. The distribution formula is based upon the local government funding allocation, and the CRF was distributed to the respective county auditors on June 23rd. The first step for each local entity to receive its allocation from the county auditor is for each legislative body to pass a resolution accepting the CRF and provide a copy of such resolution to the county auditor and to the State of Ohio Office of Budget and Management. Findlay Council passed this required resolution at its June 16th meeting, and the copies have been appropriately filed. In addition, the required registration process with OBM has been completed. The city received its distribution of the CRF on Friday, July 3rd, 2020, in the amount of $557,496.79. There are several criteria to keep in mind for the use of this money. This is considered federal funding, and strict guidelines as to the use of the funds must be adhered. The use of the money will be audited by potentially more than one agency. The funds have to be deposited into and expensed out of the city's newly established coronavirus relief fund as directed by law. Unexpended money of each local entity must be returned to the county auditor by October 15, 2020. If the city expends all money from this fund, then we would be eligible for any potential redistribution of the returned amounts from the other entities on October 22nd, 2020. Any unexpended funds from the second distribution would be returned to the state OBM by December 28, 2020. If the city returns unexpended money on October 15, 2020, we would not be eligible for a redistribution. The money cannot be used as a revenue replacement for lost revenues experienced during the COVID-19 pandemic. The expenses must be necessary expenditures incurred during the COVID-19 pandemic. Detailed documentation will be required for each use or decision of use not explicitly allowed by guidance. The expenses must not have been already accounted for in the budget. The cost cannot lawfully be funded within the budget, or the cost is substantially different use from any expected use of funds in such line item, allotment, or allocation. The expenses must occur between March 1st, 2020 and December 30th, 2020. Amounts cannot be in purchase order encumbrances. They must have been paid by the deadline date or dates. The CRF can be used for not an all-inclusive list, for PPE, disinfection of public areas, supplies, or professional services, reimbursement to the city for the federally mandated emergency paid sick leave and expanded FML through the FFCR Congress in March. Unemployment expenses experienced by the city for former employees not covered or reimbursed through other means. Costs for personnel that are substantially dedicated to COVID-19 response or mitigation, more than 50% of their full-time duties, or overtime pay specifically supporting pandemic response, or unplanned backfill for position related to the pandemic. Costs for personnel that are substantially different than their originally budgeted purpose, such as an administrative assistant reassigned, repurposed to cleaning playground equipment. Equipment such as improving telework capabilities, disinfection equipment, sneeze guards, or any other equipment that can be justified as being used toward the prevention of the spread of the virus, such as touchless faucets, etc. As required by law, the Certificate of Estimated Resources has already been updated and filed with the county to indicate the establishment of the new fund and the newly received revenue. At this time, it is necessary for council to appropriate the money so that we can start utilizing it to reimburse ourselves for expenses already incurred, as well as for future expenses. My office is in the process of compiling and identifying these particular expenses for reimbursement. By copy of this letter, the law director is requested to prepare an ordinance to appropriate as follows. From Coronavirus Relief Fund, House Bill 481, $557,496.79, to Coronavirus Relief, CRF, 220-99000-other, $557,496.79. Since the first window of spending is greatly compressed by the state law, October 15, 2020, it is respectfully requested that council suspend the statutory requirements and give this legislation all three of its readings at the meeting on July 7, 2020, and adopt legislation as emergency.
Questions? Mr. Wilson.
Mayor, I'm sure you've been looking at this and keeping a ballpark track of what our expenses are to date. Do you have any idea where we're at versus this $500,000?
Oh, goodness. Well, first of all, it's fantastic to hear that we received the money. I know we've been anxiously awaiting it, and I know we've been talking over the last number of months that we saw this coming down the pipeline. And there are a variety. I believe the auditor has a more specific number, but I believe the last one I saw was probably close to like $50,000. Again, as I've been kind of sharing throughout this, we've been fortunate that because we have not had that many cases in our community, we haven't had any substantial overtime costs, we haven't had much expense related to employees being off. The majority of our expenses have been related to plexiglass, hand sanitizers, additional cleaning products, a number of those items.
So is your thought that at this point, and Jim, I'll call you in a second, that we're gonna kind of go along with we are, and we're not going to get through the $500,000 by the first deadline?
So I know the auditor, we had exchanged some emails last week and was gonna be putting together a meeting for the elected officials to discuss, and I know, Council President Harrington was included on that email. What we're really hoping, as I shared throughout, we're kind of waiting for additional guidance because the Treasury keeps coming back because people keep saying, us included, we don't have a ton of expenses. You're allocating this money. Rarely where we've seen it is the revenue decreases. And as they specifically said, it can't be utilized for revenue replacement. But what we would really like to be able to use it for is, towards payroll of maybe safety services. As I talked to as recently as last Thursday with Senator Portman's office, they're continuing to push for Treasury to give a little more leniency. But really at this point, we'd be talking through, there are some unique things that other communities have done related to grant opportunities, more, again, kind of putting it into the community through small businesses or supporting nonprofits, a variety of other things, but we do not have a specific list other than our direct expenses at this point because the guidance continues to change.
Thank you. Jim?
Hang on, is there any other questions for the mayor? Okay, Mr. Stashek?
Thanks, and appreciate the question. And the mayor and I really haven't had a chance to talk since the holiday. But I can add that there's some significant difference in where we're at from where we were a week or two ago. The use of the monies is changing almost daily based on questions that are being asked of the regulatory agencies and their responses. However, I'm happy to say right now I think we can use in excess of $100,000, maybe as much as $130,000. We've seen some good things happen. We are a direct reimbursing employer with regard to unemployment, and we've had a number of claims in the tens of thousands of dollars for individuals who no longer work with the city, are retired on a full pension, but we have unemployment obligations for them. And we've learned recently that that can be reimbursed with these funds. And again, that's the last number on that was at one point it's $40,000. I think we're significantly higher than that now. So there's a lot of good things. The reason I sent the letters to the elected officials, did not send it to the entire body of council. I felt it should be President Harrington's decision as to how he wants to handle it. But it's so the elected officials can meet and discuss this. There are a lot of great ideas. For example, the courts have a lot of traffic come in and out of there. The courts combined with the administration have the security at the front door. You have an opportunity here now to make adjustments, to make the entries into not only the courts and how the courts are used, but into the building itself safer, healthier, protect yourself long-term and use these monies for it. Heard a great suggestion today from one of your employees. Suggested that we consider a blue light system for the air handlers to kill the things within the system since it's a contained system. I'm not familiar with how those work, but I have heard of them, and something like that could be good. I think if you're elected officials, I think if we as a group meet with the judges, of course, I think they have a great opportunity here to really incur some savings in terms of things that I'm guessing they'd like to do anyways. That we're not going to have too much problem coming up with ideas with how that money could be spent. Even touchless faucets throughout the building, touchless doors, different things. You have a lot of opportunities to spend a lot of money. The catch is we have to cut the checks by that October 15th deadline. So we have to have this work done in September. No POs, no outstanding orders. Money has to be spent out of our accounts by that 15th date. So I'll send that follow-up email to the elected officials tomorrow. Council President Harrington, again, I'll defer to your discretion as to how you'd like that handled, whether it be appropriations yourself or whatever. But I think a brainstorming session, so we can talk about the funds and we can share some of the things we've learned about those monies. I think it's going to be incredibly beneficial for this city in terms of what you might be able to do with funds that you didn't have to do things you didn't expect to do. So that's where I view it being.
Other questions from the auditor? Mayor.
Oh, go ahead. Was there
Oh,
another
I'm sorry. I
question
thought you had a
for
question for him.
I have no questions for Auditor Stashak. Thank you.
All right.
Perfect. I was gonna comment real quick, that the auditor brings up a good point that I guess I just wanna reiterate to each of you. We've been talking about this for the last couple of months, kind of preparing so that we could all brainstorm and figure out. Over the next couple of weeks, as we really put the pedal to the metal, I would love to get some insight and kind of direction from you. Because, please, no disrespect, because we have not had any conversations about this. I am not necessarily inclined to put a bunch of money into touchless faucets or things like that that are beneficial, but I would rather see the money going out into the community if we're not able to directly utilize it. So if there is ways to utilize it to help with businesses or nonprofit support, something like that, we just have to kind of weigh the pros and cons on what that benefit is. If it's something that, obviously, if it frees up money, that's something that we were needing to do over the next couple of years, and that allows us to then not have to, cut corners other areas. I just wanted to start thinking about that. And would love to get kind of your feedback as we go through it over the next couple of weeks. But I think we'll certainly come back to this body with kind of, here are all the things we brainstormed. What direction would you like to see us take?
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Any other questions for the mayor? So it was my intention to bring this up under new business. I'm more than happy to bring it up now. I agree with Auditor Stashak, the goalpost seems to be moving minute by minute on the way that money can be used. I think it's important that you as council people, that we get together along with the municipal court, the auditor, the administration, to determine what we can do, not only for the city itself directly, but like the mayor said, are we capable or able to use it out in the public? But that's a conversation, I think, to try to micromanage this tonight doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There's going to be a whole lot of questions, and I think once prior to that committee of the whole or appropriations committee meeting, there's may be a whole bunch of changes. Those who read the Ohio Municipal League daily, if not hourly, newsletters, they come out, and then the National League of Cities also seem to come out again 2 or 3 times a day with different things. So I ask you as council, and I'm calling you Mr. Wobser, do you want to have a committee of the whole? We do need to include the municipal court because they are part of this, or do you want to refer this to appropriations? So I can either ask you for that decision now, or we can wait till new business. Mr. Wilson.
I'm going to defer to Councilman Russell first, Mr. President, sorry.
So we have an October 15th deadline, so let's do a committee of the whole mid-August or beginning of September. And then we go out to bid do a 90-day bid on that and make sure we spend everything by October 15th. Why are we talking about having some kind of big powwow about how we spend the money? I mean, we just heard 5 minutes or 6 minutes of this letter being read that kind of spells this out. I'm not 100% sure, but it sounds like what it sounds like is the federal government gave us $500,000 of money, and we're trying to figure out how to spend it. And I understand that the parameters of this are changing, but trying to figure out how to spend this because it's here. I'm shaking my head, and I don't know what role I have as a council rep to advancing that idea.
Mr. Wolves.
I think I appreciate Councilman Russell's comments. I'm kind of in the same boat. Our timeline is extremely short. Obviously, October 15th, we've got to have stuff not ordered, but paid for, checks cut. We'll do well, I expect, unless they give us some really big bucket that we can use to pull this out with to get this all spent in that amount of time. like you said, the rules are changing, Mayor, and maybe there will be a significant change that would allow us to do that. Otherwise, I think we need to get going on this very soon, understanding that the rules are changing as we go. Mr. President, I would suggest that if we're going to call any committees on this, it would be appropriations. At the end of the day, appropriations is going to have to appropriate the money out of this fund to get paid for. And is that not correct, Jim? You look like you're telling me I'm wrong.
Well, I can speak to it here when you're ready. As I mentioned, you've already spent in excess of $100,000 of funds that are qualified for what we're doing, and you certainly can spend. I would be disappointed if your elected officials couldn't spend the entire amount. I would be very disappointed, as long as they work together. And the mayor had mentioned to me in an email a week or two ago of her desire to possibly put this money out to the community. I am, as an elected official myself, standing here against that for two reasons, and none of which are out of disrespect for the mayor. I have complete respect for what you'd like to do. First off is, we are the grantee. It may be possible to do, but it puts you in a very precarious situation with regard to sub-grantees and the accountability with the very, very limited amount of time that we have to spend this money, such that you could jeopardize your ability to get federal grants in the future significantly if one grantee does not respond to us the way we need them to respond and get us the information that we need. And we are ultimately responsible that everything is documented and that money would be spent properly, although we wouldn't have any control. Second thing is, as I've already mentioned, as elected officials, we've agreed to take these positions. You have a lot of things, you know, just passing the traffic in the hallways has caused concern with all of your employees in this building because of the amount of traffic there is going to the second floor for the courts or the third floor for records. There are a lot of things we can do. They're not going to be cheap. I ordered 2 plexiglass screens for my office, 3 foot by 3 foot today, just so we could screen, as you see around town now. $300. And that's just 2 of them. So by the time you get, we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. I'm not saying that we definitely can spend it all, but I think we can put a pretty healthy dent in it, especially if creative minds prevail. We really look at modernizing and making changes to this building or our facilities. Heck, you could actually right now hire a professional cleaning crew to clean every one of your playgrounds every day and get those playgrounds open for those kids so they can stay healthy this summer. There are a lot of things you can do with this money, and that's, I envision the purpose of the meeting, and again, I'm not there to direct the meeting, but to help be part of the roundtable discussion. But I would envision a big part of it being, hey, the courts has ideas, you know, we think we could use 150 to 200,000. You know, the administration has some ideas, and they could use, you know, 300,000, or we have some ideas, or they have some ideas. Let's kind of get an approach to attacking it by amounts and getting it done. However, if there's going to be an effort to take that money away and not spend it, or the thought not go into using it, we have a different challenge, because the way the legislation is written, it's written tonight, and I've requested that you pass it because you have incurred those expenses, and we would like to begin the process of recapturing those expenses. And that happens by you passing that ordinance, so you will have appropriated the money. That wouldn't preclude the discussions that we're talking about tonight, but the request is to move forward and get it done because we have very limited time. And then there would be, at some point, I would expect, likely in September, we'd come back to you and say, tonight you appropriated that $500,000+ to other for if we have to move some of that personal expenses for recapturing overtime and possibly this workers' comp and whatnot, I would come back with adjustments, a resolution of transfer from other to personal services. But the money itself as a block, the request is for you to pass that tonight.
So Jim, I just want to make sure. So we've got the $500,000 there. We've obviously spent 40,000 or so. Whatever
we spent over 100,000.
Over 100,000, excuse me, 100,000. So that can be reimbursed to the city. So we'll just we'll move that out of the fund that we're going to create.
Yes.
Back into the city.
The fund been created. I created the fund yesterday. I submitted your certificate to the county, so I submitted a second certificate, changed some revenue numbers, and that fund now exists.
Okay, and then we'll take and move those out as those receipts are brought to you and then recorded so that we can tell the government, hey, we spent this the right way.
Yes.
Okay, what about we go out and we decide, hey, we're gonna put in new hand sanitizers throughout the building that's gonna cost us $10. Do we have to appropriate that money?
No.
You do
You're
not.
appropriating it tonight with this ordinance.
So anything that we spend on this, is in the
That's
scope
qualified-
of
a
this
qualified
letter,
expense.
is already appropriated.
Yes. Which is what we would typically do with a grant like this. We would appropriate the grant and then move forward with the spending. That's why I requested the meeting of the elected officials to talk about approaching council, courts, administration, all the elected officials. Let's talk about how you want to approach the spending of this as a whole. You certainly have the ability to go a different direction with it, but you don't have much time.
Okay, I appreciate that understanding, and I guess I'll still stick with my original thought, which was this should go through appropriations versus committee of the whole. We're gonna need to move quickly. Mayor, obviously, we're gonna need to go quickly on this to get this done. The smaller our group is, the more nimble we are. Anybody's obviously allowed to come into appropriations and hear what's going on, but that would be my thought, Mr. President.
Any other questions or comments on the letter?
I have a comment.
No? Yep, Mr. Schmelz.
Certainly good to find out tonight that we got that money. I wasn't able to digest entirely the entire letter while I was sitting there, but as elected officials, as we're waiting for guidance, I would encourage you to contact those people that are going to be dictating that guidance to allow us to use it on our safety forces. If you rewind to the conversations we were having a number of months ago, due to COVID, we're being told about how our revenue was going to be impacted. Now that's the revenue side. This is revenue that's coming in to deal with COVID-related expenses. At the time that we find out that our revenue is going to come in lower than expected, we have a decision to make. Are we going to maintain our staffing level? Or are we going to make adjustments? Our fire department are emergency responders, and they deal with COVID and are prepared to deal with COVID every single day. To me, that is a 100% eligible expense, and I would encourage you to push the legislature in that direction. And also, our playgrounds are open.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Letter to be filed. That brings us to committee reports.
The Committee of the Whole meeting was held on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020, to discuss a 5-year capital improvement plan policy, a minimum reserve balance policy, and a rainy day reserve account via Resolution 18-2020.
Need a motion to accept the committee report. Mr. Slott.
I would move to accept the committee of the whole report.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of the committee report say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Committee report is adopted and filed. Legislation.
Second reading for Resolution 18-2020. A resolution adopting a 5-year capital improvement plan policy, a minimum reserve balance policy, and a rainy day reserve account as I never can say that word.
Promulgated.
Thank you. By the City Auditor's Office, and repealing all resolutions and or parts of resolutions in conflict herewith and declaring an emergency.
Okay. Ordinances.
Second reading for ordinance 2020-068. An ordinance vacating a certain portion of a certain alley hereinafter referred to as 1020 Adams Street vacation in the city of Findlay, Ohio.
Okay.
Second reading for ordinance 2020-69. An ordinance amending chapter 1100 et sec of the codified ordinances of the city of Findlay, Ohio, known as the zoning code, by rezoning the following described property referred to as 253, 251, and 0 Madison Avenue rezone, which previously was zoned R2 single family medium density to C2 general commercial.
Okay.
Second reading for ordinance 2020-74. An ordinance authorizing the safety director of the city of Findlay, Ohio to execute the necessary grant application or applications to receive grant funds from the Ohio Department of Transportation, Office of Aviation for the pavement rehabilitation project of the city's main ramp area and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Russell.
Move the council statutory rules be suspended and ordinance 2020-074 be given its third reading.
Second, Mr. Hawes. All those in favor of suspending the rules of council, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
The rules of council have been suspended, and the clerk will give this its third reading.
Ordinance 2020-74.
Mr. Russell.
I move for adoption of ordinance 20-074.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Did somebody raise their hand?
Russell.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Mr. Russell.
Just an explanation of why I moved to suspend rules. This is simply a grant application. We're not spending money, we're just simply going to the FAA to get money. So it seems like one that we should move through and ask sooner.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
And Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted.
Second reading for ordinance 2020-75, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter.
That was removed. Okay.
No.
Wasn't that the one we removed from the
We're
agenda?
going to remove it. We have to remove it. We're going to.
Now let's move.
It was removed at the beginning.
Sorry, it was.
Okay. That's all right. Go ahead.
First reading for ordinance 2020-76, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Findlay, Ohio to enter into a contract with Hancock Wood Electric Cooperative Incorporated to light certain streets in the city of Findlay, Ohio where its services are authorized and declared an emergency.
Okay.
First reading for ordinance 2020-77, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2020-78, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency. First reading for ordinance 2020-79, an ordinance appropriating and transferring funds and declaring an emergency.
Okay.
First reading for ordinance 2020-80, an ordinance appropriating funds and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Wilson.
Make a motion that council statutory rules be suspended and this motion be giving its second and third reading.
Mr. Greeno, second. All those in favor of suspending the rules of council, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Russell.
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Hellman. Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
And Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
Rules of council have been suspended. The clerk will give this its second and third reading.
An ordinance appropriating ordinance 2020-80, ordinance 2020-80.
Mr. Wilson.
Make a motion that ordinance 2020-80 be approved as written.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ordinance, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Schindeldecker.
Aye.
Mr. Slough.
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki.
Aye.
Mr. Wobser.
Aye.
Mr. Greeno.
Aye.
Mr. Haas.
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer.
Aye.
Mr. Palmer.
Aye.
And Mr. Russell.
Aye.
The ordinance is adopted. Old business. Mr. Russell.
I had conversations with the parties involved with the airport hangar that we talked about with ordinance 2020-033. Due to the COVID pandemic, that project is not going to go forward. And therefore, I would request that we the end result is that we want to remove it from our agenda. In order to do that, we have to remove it from the table and then vote to remove it from the agenda. Therefore, I would make a motion that we remove from the table ordinance 2020-033.
Second, Mr. Wobser. All those in favor of removing or to pull that from the table, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Mr. Slough?
Aye.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Haas?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker?
Aye.
Ordinance is removed from the table. Mr. Russell.
And make a motion that ordinance 2020-033 be removed from the agenda.
Second, Mr. Greeno. There is no discussion. All those in favor of removing it from the agenda, say aye if your name is called. Those opposed, nay.
Ms. Warnicki?
Aye.
Mr. Wobser?
Aye.
Mr. Greeno?
Aye.
Mr. Haas?
Aye.
Mr. Niemeyer?
Aye.
Mr. Palmer?
Aye.
Mr. Russell?
Aye.
Mr. Schindeldecker?
Aye.
The motion is adopted.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Oh, now it's adopted. All right, any other old business? New business. Mr. Russell.
I would request that an ad hoc committee be formed to discuss council rules concerning the COVID and related issues for council meetings and COVID. And so I would motion or make a motion to all of council that we form that ad hoc committee.
Second, Mr. Palmer. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the ad hoc committee formation for the COVID-19 issues, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. No nays. Okay, Mr. Russell.
As a result of the creation of the ad hoc committee for rules, and as President Pro Tem of Council, I hereby appoint Councilman Josh Palmer, Councilman Bud Haas, and myself to the committee, and call our first meeting to be held on July 16th at 6 p.m. That's Thursday, July 16th at 6 p.m. And we will hope to have a report back to all of council by our next council meeting.
Any other discussion to that? That sounds good to me. I just have one question, Mr. Russell. Is that the only thing on the agenda, or is there any other council rules that will be on that agenda?
That is the only thing that we will be addressing.
Thank you. Mr. Greeno?
Yes, I'd like to set up a water and sewer meeting for Thursday, July 16th at 5 here in council chambers, and we will discuss the water meter transmitter project and also the condition of the water fund.
Okay. Any other new business? Mr. Russell?
I would like to hold reiterate that we are having a planning and zoning committee on Thursday, July 9th at noon. And if the committee is up for it, let's try to do that here in council chambers. Hopefully that will be a quick one. But Thursday, July 9th at noon for planning and zoning here live and in person.
Mr. Slough?
That's great news. I don't think Mr. Hellman will be in attendance though, as his surgery will probably preclude him from moving around a lot.
Well, I believe this physical therapist would disagree with you. And I am happy to report that before council started its meeting, Denny and his phone had been reunited, and he was already emailing me. So obviously they did his knee and not his thumbs.
Other new business? Ms. Mayor?
Just a couple of quick items I wanted to touch on. Hopefully you all had the FYI at your desk. That's something that I just wanted to share. I think it's great to see. Very frequently we kind of go through the same items that we report on that become kind of routine business. But our team members do so much more behind the scenes that we frequently don't recognize. And so when Chief Everly was talking about some of the work that they've been able to do over the last number of months and how they've made sure that their team is always providing value and looking for new ways to contribute to our community as a whole. I thought it was cool and asked him to put this together to talk a little bit about how they work with especially commercial properties to make sure that in an emergency situation, they are positioned to be able to provide an expedient response. And so I just wanted to call that out, and certainly will continue to pass along ways that that our team is working hard to serve our community each and every day. Did anybody have any questions on that? Okay, perfect. Spoke briefly about Officer Dia. Certainly would encourage you to reach out and encourage our officers. It's been a rough couple of weeks, but certainly I think as we all have, it's been a rough couple of months just with the kind of interesting time we're going through. So I would encourage you to give them a word of thanks and appreciation for what they do, and all of our City of Findlay team members, which I know many of you do, but just continue to do that. It wouldn't be a council meeting without talking about the census. I sent you all a email this afternoon. Please continue to reiterate the need to get that done. Canvassers will, at this point, are tentatively planned for mid-August to begin doing that. Our goal is to not have them have to knock on too many of our citizens' doors. Currently, it's estimated, that high 60s of our community have completed and returned the census through self-response, but they continue to be able to do so online, over the phone, or by mail. So please make sure to continue to share that message. I know I have received a lot of questions, and you guys, I'll talk about this a little bit in my column on Friday in the Courier, but there is not any discussions locally of doing a mask mandate. We will continue to follow the state recommendations and requirements if we ever were to reach the point where we had an extreme outbreak in our community. However, I would continue to reiterate that anybody that can wear a mask should be wearing a mask when in group settings. That's the small changes. That's been our approach throughout this, is how can we make small changes that hopefully have a big difference. We don't want to end up like some of the other communities that are continuing to see outbreaks. And so please continue to do that. Good hygiene, covering coughs. If you're sick, stay home. Do that self-assessment, as well as wearing masks when able and washing your hands well. Those small things can prove very beneficial. We do not want to have to shut our economy back down, but it takes each of us making small changes to be able to have that impact for the community as a whole. So I really appreciate you doing that. But if you have any constituents, reach out. We are not looking to do a community-wide mandate at this point. That would be only in an extreme situation. And then I just wanted to hit, hopefully you all saw the information about the housing study. I will tomorrow send you the link. It's on our website as well, the housing study summary. That's been an issue that we continue to talk about. What we did was able to get kind of a third-party analysis of our community, the county as a whole. Over the next 5 years, they're estimating that we need about 1,500 additional housing units of various price points, of various kinds, and the data that they were able to put together gave us a lot more insight into what that should look like. So I would encourage you all to take a look at that, to be able to have that in your back pocket. Over the next couple of months and years, we're hoping to continue to move that forward and put that information into action. So please keep your eyes open for probably an additional document that is more of an action plan oriented document in the coming months, as the Housing Coalition, Economic Development, and myself work through what that should look like for our community.
Excuse me, Mayor, when should we anticipate that?
That's a great question. So
Did I have that on tape?
Councilman Slough asked a wonderful question of when we should expect that. Let's see. It's the first week of June. I would say by end of August at the latest. It'll really just depend on kind of how frequently we can get our work group together.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Wonderful. That's it for me.
Thank you,
Have a
Mayor.
wonderful week. Thank you.
A couple of comments from me prior to our auditor's comments. Earlier, during the reading of his letter, I talked about committee of the whole or appropriations committee to discuss the House Bill 481 CARES Act. I'd like to get guidance from council before we adjourn on my only comment to that is because municipal court is involved, whether appropriations committee is the excuse the pun, the appropriate committee, or if it's something that we can meet as a whole and invite the judges and their the needed staff that they need to bring at the same time. I'd like to get that scheduled. We can, if you, it's at council's pleasure. We can wait till the next meeting to do so, but I'd just like to get that done. I'm sorry, Mr. Stashak, what comment?
I was just going to say, it would be in your interest to do it sooner rather than wait, if you can.
I would concur that. Mr. Wilson.
I made my thoughts known earlier that I thought it should go to appropriations. I'd appreciate hearing anybody else that either agrees or disagrees with that. Either way, it's fine. We just need to get something on the book, so please let us know what you think.
As an ex-councilman, I know committee of the wholes can sometimes seem like they're just another meeting, but I think this is important. It's a lot of money. I think our community looks to you as stewards of this money to make the right decisions. You can leave it up to committee, or you can do it all together. That's up to you. But the mayor, the auditor, and your council president would like a decision. Mr. Palmer.
I concur with Councilman Wobser. We should do this in the Appropriations Committee.
Okay. So, by a show of hands, who thinks that the Appropriations Committee is appropriate? Seems to be any others. You're the minority. So, when is the next Appropriations Committee meeting?
Well, with that tidbit of information, it would be what, the 14th? It would be the second Tuesday. It'd be the 14th, or the Tuesday after the first meeting, so it'd be the 14th. How does the Appropriation Committee look like on Tuesday the 14th? Okay. Mayor, are you
That should be fine.
ready to discuss at that point? Jim, same with you? Very good.
And I'm not sure, Mayor and Jim, if it's too early to invite the judges.
I'll invite them.
They might be able to be there, they might not be able. I guess timing is important to them, certainly.
What time is it?
I'd suggest 5:30. That works. All right. 5:30, Tuesday, July 14th. And if we're going to have a large group, should we have it here in council chambers? Or go to third? We'll be here in this room, council chambers.
Okay. Just one more thing, Mr. Stashak, just a second. I'd like our new police chief to stand. Police Chief Ring. For those who aren't, most of us have met him over the years, some under different circumstances than tonight. Not me. But this is our new police chief. Who was sworn in on yesterday. Welcome, and I just want to make sure everybody understands. I'm sure you're available at any time for any of the council members and members of the audience. But I just wanted to welcome you this evening and congratulations.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Any other business from council? New business? All right, Mr. Stashak.
One last quick item. We want to save you voting on a letter to read. You're 1/4 of the way through your term, especially for the new members. We are audited annually on the fact that you've taken the classes for open meetings and sunshine law. And I need the certificates turned in when you've taken those classes. You can take them online. It's very convenient, very easy, and I want to encourage you all to do that as quickly as possible. I think the sooner you do it, the more benefit you do get out of it. So just a quick note to save you again a letter.
Any other new business? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Mr. Russell, second Mr. Palmer. All those in favor of adjourn, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. We are adjourned. You know, I took that just before I came on that online. Is it good?